Hi, I'm McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today we're going to interview a former pickup artist. So this should be interesting. Clutch from The Truth of Life, formerly The Truth of Love, will come on and join us. So it should be a good chat. We've talked about this topic before, but I haven't gotten to really get in depth on it and talk to someone that's actually been on the scene, suppose. And it should be really good because all joking aside, I think there's a lot to learn. I think there's a lot to learn from pickup artistry. I'm just curious how much it's still alive. It seems like it's not a lot of videos like there used to be. What's up, Miguel? There's not a lot of videos like there used to be, maybe on pickup artistry. I mean, do you see it a lot, B?
No.
And your YouTube?
No, you know what I remember seeing it like on TV when I was younger, like on MTV. They had some shows, pickup artists, that kind of stuff.
Oh, they had a show?
Yeah, I saw a few, like back in the day.
A while back, huh?
Uh-huh.
And what did it teach you?
It was just pretty much like taking, really non-confident guys and trying to,
Oh, is that what?
That's kind of what it was.
So it's interesting you say that because a client of mine that lives in, I believe he lives in London.
Mm-hmm.
I know in England, we all just think, oh, cool accent, but they have different accents based on where they're from in England. London's kind of a stronger accent. And he lives there, and he was saying that there's a huge community of coaches for pickup artists. And he said that it's really difficult because when you watch these guys, they actually like go around a corner and they wait for the guys at bars and they're like, do this, this, and this. So they're coaching on the spot.
On the spot.
Yeah.
There. Oh, wow.
We already got Clutch on deck here, so I should bring him in right now, even though we don't have a whole lot, but we're already talking about it. But he was saying that these guys pay a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he felt like some of the guys don't have a chance. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. We'll talk deeper about that. I'll add him in here. All right. What's up, Clutch? How are you?
How's it going, Mac? It's going well.
Good. I like the green in the background, man. That's cool, man.
Yeah, I've got some Huey lights here in my bedroom. I like to keep things mellow throughout the day.
Cool, man. Old school. Start a new fraternity.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have some Greek signs outside my door. It'll be great. I have a lineup of men waiting to get in, like Fight Club. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. I forgot how good that movie Old School was, huh? That was a great movie.
Oh, that was amazing. That was back in the day when I still had a thing for Alicia Cuthbert before she married Dion Phaneuf. But
I don't even know who that is.
I don't know who that is.
I'm not good with actor and actresses.
Oh, I know who the actress is. I don't know who the other guy is. I don't know.
Oh, Dion Phaneuf, he's a hockey player. That's how I know.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's stereotypical Canadian girl ends up falling for and marrying a hockey player. Try to figure that one out.
Yeah. Surprise.
Absolutely.
So I have a few questions that I just put on the side, but are you comfortable talking about this topic today?
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Yeah, sure. We've glazed over it before, but not just went into it a little deeper. And you had said recently that you felt like it was a good thing that you learned a lot of things from it.
It had its mix of both good and bad. It was very enlightening for me in the sense that it taught me the aspect of being social, being funny and witty. Like even now, come up with something on the fly just based on a comment. Like that's all from pickup. But overall, it was I would say a positive change for me because it allowed me to grow and it allowed me to be more social. And the skill set that I learned from that experience allowed me to get a better career and have better friends and even attract my fiance to a certain extent. So it wasn't all bad.
So how did you, first question, how did you become a part of this community? Were you recruited?
I was recruited by someone who saw my skill sets. And truth be told, this gentleman, who I won't repeat his name, I would say is probably on the sociopathic side of the spectrum if I really had to put my finger on it. But he liked the way I could speak. And at that point, I was taking public speaking courses, but I still wasn't getting that flow about what social interaction was all about. I knew how to speak. I didn't really know how to interact. So he saw the potential. He introduced me to what's called the community. And slowly I started reading some books and things started making sense, especially from someone like myself. I grew up in a household full of women and I had a certain perception of how attraction worked. And to no fault of their own, these women that I grew up with happened to be my sisters and my mom. They had the emotional understanding of what they felt caused attraction. But overall, a lot of the things I had been brought up to learn were counterintuitive to what this new process I was being subjected to was teaching me. And more importantly, what I was being taught was getting results. So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, so it's not like this. It's something completely different.
So what was like an example of what maybe you learned from your sisters and your mom that wasn't true?
Well, they usually had a perception of people that would respect them and and treated them like royalty as being the cliche charming prince, and they were all looking for this thing, or at least they claimed to all look for this thing. And then I learned about negging, and I learned about this back and forth cliche of being playful. And it wasn't something I was subjected to before. I would say that probably the biggest thing was the fact that the mystery behind the attraction, does he like me or doesn't he like me, was probably the biggest attraction factor when you get to meet someone. Because it's not, if you know someone likes you, you're going to automatically dismiss it. You're going to be like, yeah, that's fine and dandy. But if it's a mystery and it's hot and cold and does he like me? Does he not like me? Well, he seems to laugh with me, but he's also talking to these other people and making them a priority. Oh, all of a sudden I'm working for it. And before you know it, you're building attraction with someone who, under normal circumstances, you probably wouldn't have built attraction with.
So I'm familiar with it, but I'm just curious about if someone else watches this video and they're wondering about the nagging, how would you classify that or give an example of that for someone that is unfamiliar with it?
Well, first off, nagging's outdated, but if I had to,
it's an old term, yeah.
It's an old term, and to be honest, it doesn't really work anymore, at least not to the extent that it used to.
All right.
But if I had to throw it out there, I would say negging would fall under the construct of a negative compliment, in the sense that I'm not necessarily being an asshole or being a jerk to you, but I'm giving you a comment that isn't quite a compliment, but it sort of hooks you into saying, what exactly did he mean by it? So, for example, you can comment on a girl on her nails saying, oh, that's great that you let your mother do your nails, or something stupid like that. Something that doesn't necessarily brush off this concept of, I like something you're doing. It's more along the lines of, what did he actually mean by that? And it's that mystery that really gets the hook, rather than the negative compliment. What most people seem to interpret negging as is they seem to interpret negging as being an asshole, which isn't the case. It's not about being a jerk. It's about being that person that's playful and being that person that really knows how to carry themselves. If you can do that, you can actually build attraction fairly quickly.
Why would you say it's outdated? I know the term's not used quite frequently anymore, but
well, pickup in itself has changed, because when I was growing up and I was in university, part of the routines, as we called them, part of the sarging techniques we used to call going out to the bar sarging, was you couldn't necessarily be passive in that environment. So in order to meet someone, you had to go to the clubs, you had to go to the shopping malls, you had to go to the library, and you had to go up and talk to random strangers. It wasn't a case where you could jump on Tinder or jump on Plenty of Fish and just connect with people simultaneously. It was a case that you had to legitimately do some actual work, and it was awkward. Approaching a stranger in the street is awkward, especially if you've grown up in a situation where you're incredibly timid, as I was at the time. So negging was essentially a way of, I would say, disengaging or deactivating the defense mechanism that most women had at the time, because the attractive woman gets approached anywhere between 20 and 40 times a day if they're in a really social setting. Of course, I'm talking pre-COVID here. So if she's getting the 40th guy approaching her in a day trying to be nice, she's just like, just get out of my face. I don't want to talk to you. Versus if you approach with an egg, which is you're sort of showing that you're not really interested in her, but you're engaging in conversation, it sparks a very different reaction. But what's happened now is women have adapted to it, and society as a whole has adapted to it. So it's not about me approaching a stranger in the street anymore, although I can do that if I really want to. It's more about the charisma and the charm and people that are really confident in their own skin. That's really what gets attraction nowadays.
Why do you think it's changed?
Definitely because of technology. I would say technology is probably a big factor there. Like Tinder really changed the game. I can't really undervalue the quantity of that statement, because before Tinder, even when you approached someone on a dating app, whether or not they liked you or not was a mystery. You were taking a risk. And even on Tinder, like when you both swipe right and you have a match, what's the likelihood of you in that match actually connecting and actually building an actual relationship with it? It's quite small. You throw in that other X factor where you don't even know if the person is going to like you.
Or if they look that way in real life.
Or if they look that way in real life. Exactly. So it was a very different time. It was a very different time in a very different space. And even now, like the appropriate pickup artists no longer Sarge. It's all about the online presence now. It's all about how you can portray yourself as being funny and witty. And it's almost like an advertisement campaign to say, look at me, this is what makes me unique. And if you can grab that instant attention within the first 3 seconds, you're in. But it's a completely different game now.
So that's where the pickup artistry, like as a whole, as a group, that's what it shifted to, is the online dating stuff.
It's what they call natural pickup, which is less about the routines and more about the being natural of day-to-day activity. Like there are certain aspects that you can improve on, like your ability to carry a conversation, your ability of being witty on the fly. These are all attractive things, but more importantly, what's getting attraction now is the instant gratification method. So can you have a deep impact or have a deep, meaningful memory with someone as quickly as possible? That's what tends to win nowadays. So pickups changed. It's very different.
Mm-hmm. I suppose, though, nagging would still be useful when you're dating. It's just not used in the opening. Is that what you mean? Because you kind of characterized it as an opener, right? On a cold approach.
It can be an opener. It could also be seen as teasing in some ways. Like I nag my girlfriend all the time. Yeah, or fiance, I should say, all the time. So one of the things I nag her on is her ability to eat food. She loves food. And it got to the point where her coworkers even commented, wow, you eat a lot of food. I'm like, well, I'm constantly telling you, you got to ease up on the calorie intake. And meanwhile, I'm still overweight. I'm still losing weight. Doesn't matter. The idea is, it's just teasing her. And it's about being playful more than anything else.
All right. So how many years were you in it? Or would...
Oof. That's a good question.
It's like being in a gang where you jumped out.
I would say I probably entered it around 2005-ish.
That's not long ago.
No, and I eventually exited, I would say, around 2011-ish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The main reason is
tours of duty.
Yeah, well, keep in mind that my friends changed, the scenery changed in that time as well. This is also during the time when the Pickup Artist movie came out and the game was coming out. So there was a lot of exposure to these routines, and we had to adapt because people talk, women talk. So you had to essentially come up with your own routines, and you had to come up with your own formula. The irony of it all is, in our developing of our own formulas, we were actually building a personality. Let alone been known to us. We didn't realize that these routines were actually helping us mold the type of character we wanted to turn into. Again, you have to keep the context of the type of people that were attracted by this. And right now, the other extreme, at least in current modern day society, seems to be the incel movement. where instead of taking action and taking ownership and saying, I'm going to make this change, people are growing up to be resentful. They're growing up to be angry.
Passing blame.
Projecting blame is probably the best analogy there. And of course, the difference there is like, look, we had a philosophy, and this is a philosophy I followed, but I knew many people that claimed to follow the philosophy and didn't, which is this was all about the experience. And any person I ever met, I tried to leave them better off than how they were when I found them, regardless of what the interaction was. And that's a philosophy I carry over to this day. Sometimes I fail it, but for the most part, I want to say that the people that interact with me have a positive experience.
My mic went off there. There it goes.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You're good.
Yeah. Would you actually, being that you were in it 5-6 years, it sounds like, did you recruit some people? Did you say like, hey, I see some potential in you, man?
I mean, I would recommend some people for it, especially the people I considered socially awkward. And you have to keep in mind that even today, when I speak to certain people, especially when I was doing coaching, a lot of these people, this was their first relationship, and they had this vacuum of confidence that was completely sucked out of them whenever the person left them. So a lot of times it's people not seeing their own value. People are often looking at their environments to get justification of who they are, especially if they've grown up in a very toxic family or in a non-reinforcing family. So for them to be able to gain that confidence again, there's an expression we have, we fake it till we make it. And that was true in pickup. You had to fake that confidence, and you would fall, you'd stumble, a girl wouldn't call you back, or you got hurt by someone, you get up and try it again and try it again and try it again. And eventually became a routine where you started realizing that you're not going to have much success in the world of dating, regardless of how good you look or who you happen to be. It's all about, can you recover quickly? And that was really the main lesson I got out of that. And that's what's helped me in my career, because as I'm sure you guys are aware, career is never consistent. You're always going to have failures. You're always going to have unexpected outcomes. It's about how you're able to recover from those outcomes that define who you are.
Right. Well, it's interesting because you think about the pickup community based on the game and those kinds of things, very surface level, right? Stuff I've read the books or different things like that. And it's usually a lot of sharing your wins. Right.
Yeah, we call them the body count. We call them the body counts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Sharing the wins, but there's a lot of losses along the way. So what's interesting about that, what I just thought of when you were saying that is that it sounds like if you were going to recover quickly and you have a community, right? Like a group that you talk to online or whatnot, like we do with Discord or one of those things. So you guys would support each other. It sounds like there wasn't a whole lot of room for someone to get a pity party where let's say someone had a bad story, or I haven't had one girl answer a phone call in a month, whatever, you know what I mean? It sounds like where now there's whole groups that's the aim. It's like who can go lower, who can claim worse stories. And some of them are true. And just like in the pickup community, I'm sure there's guys that have bad stories, right? But it sounds like they wouldn't get supported the way it is, because you're saying that you'd probably support the fact, like, just get up from it rather than, oh yeah, I got one too.
Right.
Well, there was a difference. The difference, at least for now, because like Kelly, you and I coach people on a daily basis that are getting past that one person that really hurt them. But the expression we had back in the day was this term called one-itis. And that was, if you had that one person, that one woman that really strung you along or really broke your heart, the rule was you had to sleep with 10 women in order to get past that one person. That was our suggestion. Looking back on it now, it's a terrible piece of advice. Like,
I was just going to say, wow, man.
Yeah, it's a terrible piece of advice.
Search and destroy, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Like, the only way to get past this one heartbreak is to go sleep with another 10 women, which is like terrible. It's terrible advice, and it's an avoidant mindset. It's a mindset that's built on the gratification of getting the win rather than building a connection. And that's the one criticism I constantly have with the community, and I still have with the community. It's all about building attraction. It talks nothing or very little about building emotional, stable relationships. It's all about getting the hot girl or getting the girl to connect with you, and you being this high value alpha male, and you being the shit and being the center of attention. Look, I could be an extrovert at work. I'm an introvert outside of the office. Like at home, I spend most of my time reading. I spend most of my time alone. That's just the type of character I am. I don't have the patience. I don't have the mentality to constantly push on this dominant alpha male aura around me. And nor do I think anyone has that capability to be like that 24/7. If you do, you're probably a big douchebag. And the idea there is, like, what's the end goal here? The end goal here for most of these men, at least most of them, was to find a stable relationship, because for all intents and purposes, their mother, their father, the rest of society had failed them to teach them the most basic of principles of how to find someone and build attraction.
That sounds like what came to mind is I'm in this HIT class that I do like once or twice a week, and they have stations, and sometimes the lady that runs it, sometimes you do the class and you're like, wow, that wasn't so bad today. I mean, you get a sweat and it was difficult, and then sometimes I'm like, did anyone finish all these? There's like 7 rounds of 10 push-ups or 7 rounds of 15 this, or you know what I mean? And some guy will be done like 10 minutes early, and I'm like, there's no fucking way. There's no way you did everything. You had to cheat on a few of these 15s, you went to 10, or whatever, because you got to count your own. That's just me maybe being a sore loser. The fact that like I'm like, I didn't get it done. How did you, right? My point is, I'm wondering if these guys that had the one-itis and you're like, yeah, just bagged 10. Did they come back 2 weeks later? Done.
I mean,
yeah, I did it.
Some of them did.
And you're thinking in the back of your mind, yeah, right. Right on, man. Yeah, right on. You can't go check it, man.
Well, you gotta reinforce your bro, even if it's even if he's lying.
Yeah, I just took care of that in a weekend, man. I just went on a run. Like, I could see some dudes doing that in a group like that, where you're like, really?
Yeah. Well,
right?
Again, we have to put ourselves in the mindset of the time. So again, this is before Tinder. So
and before everyone having a phone, even 2005, not everyone was taking that many pictures and sending them, and you had a cell phone maybe, but you didn't really. It wasn't like it is now, where it's
it wasn't.
Taking video of everything. Actually, that's a big one too. I've had some clients this last year that I'm like, stop taking videos of things that you can get in trouble for. You know what I mean? Because it's done. Right. It's like, that one's not. She keeps watching the video. It's like, okay, don't do that again. That's one of those ones that was stupid. I don't have a lot to say about that,
I mean, you know me, Mac. Like, I barely have a Facebook presence. I have a Facebook account strictly so people can find me, and for Marketplace. And I have 2 posts in my entire history of my new account that I created last year. One of them was, I'm here back on social media because people were trying to find me and couldn't. And the second post was, thank you for your birthday wishes. And that was it. I've really tried to limit that intake because I really don't like what social media has become.
Oh, man. It's just, what's interesting about it? Everyone knows it. Like, there's some people on YouTube that have really big channels, and they'll kind of laugh off how bad it is, but they're content whores. They'll do
the big bucks.
Yeah. Like they'll be like, this is just great content. It's like that No Jumper guy, B.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this guy, he's got like a cool podcast where he interviews an array of people, and he's in LA. So of course he's got a lot of porn stars on, and those are always heavy hitters
out of a shop or something like that.
So then I was telling B, I was like, oh, I've come across this channel unknowingly in a search, right? Or it comes up on your feed, and you can't help but look him up because he's got a tattoo on his face. He's one of those. He's just
everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair.
It's like seeing a live shaman or something. It's like, whoa, haven't seen that very often. I have to take a double take. It's a great marketing tool. I mean, because you don't see people have it.
We used to call that peacocking back in the day.
Yeah, I know that term from the game. Yeah.
So you'd always wear some unique type of accessory. Like looking back on it, it was stupid as shit. But it was like it was just
it doesn't work with everyone, but it works in certain.
It makes you stand out.
I mean, I could stand out just as much by being the funny person in the room than I can by wearing one stupid like accessory. And that's really what it was. It was just a means to an end. It was getting people out of their shell, which I can kind of respect in many aspects. Because again, you have to look at the mentality of the people that would join this cult. It was people that essentially didn't know how to talk to women. So for us, it was being reborn in the aspects of I'm finally learning the skill sets that I didn't really learn as a child. So there was a lot of good that came from it.
Don't you think that there are some people that are in the community? I've met people that are in it that are already good with women. So it's not always the case, and they obviously do better, right?
Yeah,
because they're naturals.
Well, we would call them just that. Those were naturals. Those were people that were just naturally good with women. And if you analyzed what it was they did, they were following the correct routines. They were just doing it so intuitively that it didn't matter. For them, it was who they were as a person. Now, the fact that they joined the community, usually they join the community as an ego boost because it was nice to be around guys that were complimenting you and your conquests. But at the same time, some of the best pickup artists I ever met were, quote, natural. They were just had this natural charisma to them, and they were good people, and they tried to help other people. But it was much like me growing up with my sisters, where they had this certain notion of what it was to be successful, what a true man does to get that attraction. And they didn't quite understand it because they understood the outcome. They didn't understand the steps.
How much do you think with Red Pill, and I wouldn't even know when Red Pill started. I guess Rollo Tomasi is kind of a part of that, but it's evolved into something different, I think. Now it's in so many different directions. How much do you think that overlaps with PUA or pickup artistry, or is it just two different lanes?
I think it definitely strays off of pickup. So as pickup sort of started diminishing, and you always had these people in the community, these men that were just resentful towards women and used their skill sets to essentially hurt people, which I was never a fan of, and I'm still not a fan of. Regardless of what your expected outcome is to be, I was always transparent about my objectives. And that's really where I carry myself even today, even in my work. I try to be as transparent as I possibly can because no one deserves to get hurt like that. That's uncalled for. What's happened though is you've had a bunch of men that have grown up with this resentment and have looked at themselves and looked at each other to start building themselves into a person that they wish to be. But in trying to build that new character, they still hold all this unresolved resentment and anger that sort of ends up snowballing into something completely different. So Red Pill talks about attraction, and it talks about, a woman will only value you for as much as you value yourself, which is kind of true. But at the same time, the type of women that this is targeted against are women that I personally would never want a relationship with, based on both what I've seen and personal experience. Finding someone that is good relationship material is all about finding someone that has the correct mindset that allows you to grow and make mistakes, because everyone does make mistakes. But what you're having here is you're having an extreme group that is taking a very narrow view on the world and targeting that narrow view on a certain type of person. And to a certain extent, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it keeps building on itself. And it's kind of like social media where, you jump on and see one ad, and then you see another ad, and you see another. Before you knew it, you're an extremist, regardless of what you believed when you first entered.
What's your best 3 stories in those 6 years?
Oof. Are we talking like PG stories? Are we talking just...
Well, I'm just going to let you speak freely however you want to speak. Maybe if you want to leave something out that's... I noticed your eyes fluttered a bit, so maybe you want to leave that out.
Well, there's always there's always a risk that my fiance will eventually see this
whatever
video,
whatever you're comfortable with, or you know what you could do? You could do a vicarious, like, well, I'll tell you about a friend of mine.
I mean, there were a lot of stories like that. There were a lot of stories where you just laugh your ass off. You're like, that happens, really? Well, I told you one of these stories once. It was the concept of me coming to the realization that I hadn't made it. So there was one time I went to a party, and I ended up meeting this group of people that I had never met before. And by the end of the night, long story short, yada, 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 I ended up getting the most attractive girl at the party, which, you know, you had fast forward 4 or 5 years prior to it, never would have happened. Never in my life would that have ever happened. But it was that realization after that night, and I chose to walk away from that situation where I said, you know what, I actually have value. I bring value to myself. And for someone that grew up in a household where they were never reinforced, they were never given proper love, to me that was huge, because I became comfortable in my own skin for a change, even if it was for a moment.
That's one story that wasn't very detailed, but that's okay. That's all right.
Well,
what's the next?
Well, you're asking for field level detailed reports. Is what you're saying.
I don't know. I mean, was there ones that lost you for a minute? Was there ones from other guys that you were pretty impressed? I'm sure there's some guys that you were rooting for, some Rudies in the group, some Rudigers.
I mean, there was, but like, well, first off, you have to keep in mind that this was well over at this point 10 years ago. So for me to remember a lot of those stories in great detail is a struggle as it is. But the other side of it is that a lot of the stories that we quote found as successes back then or found funny, looking back on it now, especially with modern times, wouldn't be socially acceptable. So it's
okay. It's a minefield
again,
then, huh? It's like, Max, drop the question, okay? I'm not comfortable. I'll send you an email encrypted.
It's more along the lines that the field itself has changed. So dealing with attraction back then was very different than dealing with attraction now. Like back then, if you were to walk up to a 9 or a 10 and start a conversation, the likelihood that she would blow you out the water was quite high. And there were times where you had to re-engage the conversation over and over and over, not to an annoying level, not to an obsessive level, but enough that you gained interest and you gained some kind of connection with this person. Now, looking at it in modern times, people always talk about, you know, boundaries, and they talk about different lifestyles now. And again, the whole field of dating is completely different now than it was back then. Those stories wouldn't be socially acceptable now. So me talking about, you know, walking into a bride's party at a bar and making out with the bride and making out with 3 of her friends, like, you would laugh about it now, and I would laugh about it back then. But looking at now as an adult and having a level of maturity, I wouldn't do that stuff, even if I was single.
You were a wedding crasher too?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh man. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was true. I didn't know people really did that. I thought it was just a movie.
Actually, yeah, I think I was reading some statistics about it once, and something like 33% of weddings have crashers in them. Something
really?
Wow. Yeah, it was something ridiculously high. But yeah, I've definitely read up on it.
I just remember getting to my early to mid 20s and then having a few friends that would get married, or, you know, extended friends or friends from college. And you're like, okay, you know, and just hearing about the cost of a wedding then, that I remember it just used to be like, what? Like, really? And it would be like one friend stood out to me. I remember after they got married, they saved up for 2 years to do a wedding at the Ritz-Carlton because his girl wanted it there. And they didn't make a lot. I'll just leave it at that. It wasn't so they weren't going to stay at the Ritz.
They were scratching.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's what they want to do. So I remember the statement though, after they got married, he was like, yeah, we just did our 1 week vacation in Hawaii, like the honeymoon. And he's like, there goes 2 years of savings. And I just thought, wow, you know, like, but you know what? For some people, this is what I've learned in my coaching journeys, for some people, it means a lot. You know, like that,
really
that could
important,
be an epic moment in their life. To me, I was like, I would have rather went on like a 1 month honeymoon and had a small wedding or something, you know, like that. But I mean, you're talking to someone who's never been married. So, you know, it's like, so the value's not there in my 20s at all. So that's part of it. But I just remember that. I was like, wow. Now you're saying if I'm like my friend and I get a Ritz-Carlton wedding and then I got 5 randoms that are trying to hook up with my girl, right? It's like, whoa, what are you asking for, man? Huh? Jeez.
Well, again, it's all about perspective at that point. Like, I'm with you. I would rather have a smaller wedding, and I'd rather save up to buy a house or to have a larger honeymoon. And not everyone's like that. Like, I know friends that, you know, would drop 20 to 30 grand on a wedding ring alone, let alone, you know, the actual wedding. Different people, different perspectives, different values. What I find has happened now is that a lot more emphasis has been put on the image of getting married and having that perfect wedding rather than the experience itself. So there's a lot of social media interaction. There's a lot of projections. There's a lot of showboating, and I'm not a fan of that.
Good word, showboating. I haven't heard showboating in a long time. That's a good term for it too. It's true. It's actually true of so much with social media, and me and B have talked about this before with sports. I don't watch hockey, but I don't think it happens as much in hockey, but like basketball and American football, that's how you know I've lived internationally when I say American football.
American.
Of course.
Right? Everyone else is like, what do you mean? It's like the rest of the world calls soccer football. All right. Yeah. So the showboating, like I said, I haven't heard that in a long time. Like used to be there's like touchdown dances. Now the whole team comes down.
Yeah.
For any touchdown. Someone gets like 8 yards and the guy's like having a conniption fit, like jumping up, and you're just like if you watched 80s football or 90s football, there'd be guys getting decked. You know what I mean? It's like, right? It's just changed so much. Like I said, think about that. You score a touchdown, and it used to be like, I think before, like in the 80s, it was Billy White Shoes Johnson. And he was the first one to do like a touchdown dance and do like, you know, and then like some guys that have some dances. The whole team runs 50 yards and takes a like a class photo and takes multiple poses. It's like, whoa. Right? And they could be losing. Also, they could be losing the game, but scored, and they're going to get their money's worth. Right? Same thing in basketball. Basketball, love the sports. Basketball has always been kind of a one-on-one, ha. And one took it there, you know, like the street ball, different things. But now it's like some guy does a crossover, someone falls, the whole crowd goes fucking nuts. Ooh, even if the shot doesn't go in.
Right.
It's like, really, is it that funny that it's not even that some guy faked the other guy out. Sometimes the guy fell because he slipped. And it's like, yeah. And everyone on the sidelines is like, it's like, what is this? You know?
In many aspects, it's like pickup because, you know, we used to showboat all our successes and all our conquests. We don't talk about the 99 rejections we received on that one.
That's what I meant. You'd show that off within a group. You wouldn't put that on the social media because social media wasn't really there to do it yet, huh?
We had forums. So it wasn't
private.
Yeah, we do private messaging. We all had our nicknames online. That's where I actually got the nickname Clutch. But it was a case of us comparing what we used to call field reports. So we would go out, try to approach random people, take notes, make comments on where we were wrong, share with our community, and they'd give us feedback, and we built on that. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of these people were usually isolated in cities, especially early on. So you would have one person posting from, you know, in the middle of Nebraska, for example, and being the only person in that community. So he's building his character based on feedback of complete strangers online and learning how to attract people that way. Again, you have to put yourself in the mindset of someone that seeks out this kind of community. These are people that have truly never been able to build any kind of attraction. So to build attraction based on the notes of a complete stranger, it's really interesting to see. I would love to see a sociology study done on it to determine what kind of impact it had on the rest of society, because times really did change after the game came out. People had different perceptions. Women were more cautious of people that would approach them, rightfully so. But overall, I feel that society as itself has changed, because now, rather than reinforcing self-development and pushing through the chaos that is discovering this kind of communication, people are just growing resentful, and they're reinforcing that resentment. And I think we're going down a really dark path here where, although I wouldn't want to go back to 2005, I definitely would want to go to a place where I would enable people to develop themselves rather than to live in self-pity and anger.
What would be the first steps to develop yourself? Top 3.
Admit there's a problem. Number one choice. Good. Yeah. Number one choice is you have to admit that there's a problem. You have to admit that you are to no fault of your own, something about you has made you different, and you want to change that problem, whatever it happens to be. If you can admit that, that's probably the hardest step. A lot of people live in these self-isolating bubbles or silos, and they will reinforce the same story to themselves over and over and over. You and I see it as coaches all the time when we're dealing with people that date the same kind of person and repeat the same kind of mistakes. How many times have you dealt with a serial cheater? Or how many times have you dealt with someone that tends to date the same kind of woman or the same kind of man? And still, time and time again, they reinforce themselves. You have to be willing to step back from that situation, look at yourself and say, there's clearly a problem here. And if I don't address it, it's going to be the end of me, quite literally.
You've mentioned numerous times here how different it is to be a pickup artist then to now, and how it's changed and evolved. So if someone was going to take a good approach now, knowing what you know, because it's kind of like you can still transfer over some of the stuff that you learned, like you said, communication, nagging, these kinds of things. Do you think that cat's out of the bag a little bit on some of the stuff, and that's why women are more defensive of it, or popular culture overall has just evolved in the way they communicate where that doesn't fly as easily? That makes sense.
I'd say it's probably a little bit of both, if I had to really put my finger on it, because before the invent of social media, you have to keep in mind that the average person didn't socialize with as many people as they do now. Even someone who's a timid, let's throw a term out there, dork, that doesn't have many friends, will have 300 or 400 people on Facebook. It's a very different world now than it was back then. So if you didn't go out and make those communications and build that network, you were quite frankly a loner. And this is where things get really unique, in the sense that technology has allowed us to become closer together more than ever before. At the same time, there are people that obsess and immerse themselves in that social media and have completely disconnected themselves from the outside world. So it's a bit of an opposite effect. People feel more connected in the sense that they get that dopamine rush every time someone likes some random post that they post on Facebook.
Yeah,
but it's empty.
It's meaningless as far as, self-confidence. So yeah, you have these people that know a ton of people, but when you put them alone in a room, are they able to sit there with a book and read and be completely calm and content with themselves? And this is why, in my opinion, the pandemic hit people so hard, because all of a sudden people were disconnected from that digital reality and came to realize, wow, I am truly by myself. And am I completely content with myself? And the answer is, in the majority of cases, they probably weren't, which is why depression shot up to 35% during the pandemic. And that's only the cases that people reported on. You can only imagine how bad it really got.
Well, it's ironic. I'm going to push back a little bit on that statement, because I know a few people that were like, I liked it, because I had an excuse to stay home and order pizza, play video games. Sure. I knew a few, and I was kind of like, "Are you serious?" And they were dead serious. They were dead serious, and they were the types like I believed them, and they were like, "No, it was cool." Yeah, because I didn't have to push myself to do anything.
Well, it's ironic, because when the pandemic started, and me, I'm a numbers guy. I started looking at from a risk management standpoint. I'm like, okay, we're totally fucked. Like, the genie's out of the hat. We could probably control this within 6 months. We ended lockdowns, at least in the US, after 3 weeks. I'm like, there's no way. This is going to be a forever thing. But when it happened, I was living in Chile at the time, and Chile was really restrictive on lockdowns. So just to give you some perspective, in Chile, I could only go out 2 times a week for 3 hours to get groceries, and that was with a government pass. And they literally had military checkpoints. And even at the grocery store, they would not let you in unless you had this government pass on your phone. So literally the rest of the time, I would spend all my time in a small 600 square foot apartment with my then girlfriend. And I told her, look, I'm going to eat a whole bunch of junk food and I'm going to get fat, because I have 2 choices here. I can choose to get fat, or I can choose to be depressed. I choose to be fat until this is over. And I stand by that choice. Now I'm paying the repercussions of that choice, slowly getting back into shape. It's a struggle, but I did not become depressed because I know myself well enough to know, okay, I have my limits.
Well, in the future, book a coaching session, okay, with myself, and then we'll give you a few more options. That's not enough options. That's like the equivalent of like the presidential election, when someone's like, "Who are you going to vote for?" And I go, "Well, I don't really vote." And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "I don't like the options." It's like,
actually, I have spoiled my vote in the past as protest because I haven't liked the options. I'll still vote. I'll just be like, I'm spoiling.
You're like, you have to, and I'm like, no, I don't. That's actually an option. It's actually an option to do neither. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so funny how you have to be, no, I don't. That's what you have to do because you want to talk about it. Someone just brought it up. I was at a dinner with living abroad. You probably had this in Chile. A lot of expats, we call them, where people are from different places. And sometimes Europeans will be like, they'll want to ask me all these things about politics in America. And I'm like, never really followed it before I left. So I just don't get deep into it. So they're like, what? Well, what about that? And I'm like, I'll listen, but I'm not passionate about it or have a big point of view and, these kinds of things. And sometimes they're like, well, you have to. No, I don't.
I hate people that say that. It's like, well, you have to, like, you get those people that come to you from other coaches, like, well, you have to get better. It's just like, what good is that going to do to someone that is in the heart of depression and with constant anxiety? It doesn't solve anything.
It's funny you said that. One of the clients that I had, he was on the live stream yesterday, actually. He said he went on to a live stream and the coach said, I demand you that you forgive yourself now. I demand you.
There's a lot of sketchy.
He said he was like, what? Like, what do you mean? He's like, I demand you, right? And I was like, wow. Sounds like a God complex, right?
I've said this before. I'll say it again. For every good therapist, there's at least 10 bad ones. I say the same thing about coaches.
Well,
I include my ex-girlfriend in that, by the way. Not that she'll ever see this, but there's a lot of shitty advice out there.
Well, yeah, everyone's projecting. You got to take care of yourself first. Yeah, there's a lot of surface advice is what I'd say is one of the biggest things. The ability to kind of dig deeper on an issue. When someone says, I can't forgive myself, you got to keep asking some more questions rather than push harder at, just let it go. Just like, that's one of the biggest lines on the thing. It's like, that sounds great. Why do people have so much trouble with it? Because it's always different for different people, right? It's not so simple just to let go of your issue.
Not just a formula.
Well, there's a secondary gain probably. There's all kinds of things involved. But for the person out there with a good quote, according to Marcus Aurelius, who's, the biggest genius of all time, even though,
how many people quote that motherfucker and don't even know who he was? Like, it's just like,
well, Ryan Holiday's made a whole 3-year book career out of, and Ryan Holiday, he's cool. I mean, he writes books, he's done a lot of stuff, but like everything he does
Stoicism
is the Stoics, and he quotes one of those. And ironic thing I want to do is, I've put it on a post before where I'm like, I wonder if Marcus Aurelius would like you regurgitating everything he said. It's just ironic, right?
Well, I said,
would you be the kind of guy he would want to hang out with?
Even before you finish that statement, it's like, would Marcus Aurelius like me? I'm like, probably not. Like, even before you finish that sentence. So yeah, so it's just like, yeah, would he like being quoted all the time? Probably not. It's the same thing with Socrates, where Socrates was all about living in the moment and discovering oneself and being beautiful on the inside as well as the outside. And the amount of people that quote him, and specifically Plato, as a result of his work, he'd be turning in his grave if he was alive. He'd be like, this is not what I'm teaching.
And some of the quotes too, the ironic thing is too that they're very simplistic, which is stoicism, right? Being that way, and it would be like, be kind to people. Marcus Aurelius. You know, it's like, okay. Oh, it's a little bit bigger now.
Because he said it.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
yeah, you got a direct line.
Well, how about just not be an asshole? Like, it's just like, why do we have to quote people? Why? Well, this is probably going to trigger some people. I don't feel the need to have a religion based on not being a jerk to other people. But it's funny how many people require that reinforcement. It's just like, look, I'm sure everyone here has been the subject to some kind of scrutiny, no matter what it is. Just don't do that to other people. Now, given it'll take some time to become self-aware enough where you realize that you're being a jerk to other people, and power to if you're going through that discovery. But look in the mirror and see, are you truly happy with yourself? And if you're not happy with yourself, this is the case where I turned to the community, and I joined a community of men that had certain objectives. And at the end of the day, I ended up leaving after about 6 years. But I don't regret my experiences there. I don't regret what I learned, because it taught me a lot about myself and about people. And it's that skill set that turned me what I am today, including a coach when I was coaching. It taught me that there's more to people than what you see superficially.
Was being a teacher for years, I always noticed whatever class I had, there'd always be leaders. So there's always 2 or 3, maybe 1. But it's kind of interesting teaching for years. They'd either sit in the front or they'd sit like second or third row center. Always. They rarely sit in the back. Kind of just a random thing that you'll notice. If you've ever been in a class or something like that, they usually sit in the front or they sit middle, second row. And they would kind of run the class. Like you think like, oh, you're teaching the same subject, but it'll be different this term because of the different class. Some classes will get behind a project. Some others will be like, this is stupid. 10 of them will turn it in late. It's just a domino effect from the leaders a lot of times. So I'm just curious, this PUA is a group. How are the leaders?
Oh,
how are corrupt?
Toxic as fuck. In some cases. The problem is as well is
that was a quick answer.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. There's one guy I remember from Ottawa. His name is Chris. Super nice guy. Never had any issues with him. He was a leader. He even taught classes from what I remember. Amazing human being. He is one out of literally, 80 people that I ever met that were quote leaders that, ran amok. And sure, people will show you that nice side charm. Initially, they're your best friend. They're the life of the party. They want to be around you. But slowly, as you start peeling the layers of the onion, and you truly discover what kind of people these guys are. In fact, this is why I ended up leaving finally, was like, we're complete hypocrites. We say that we want to leave people better off, but I've known for a fact that you've broken several hearts throughout your time and in the game. And what happened to this notion of being better to other people, including yourself? What happened to this notion of trying to bring good into the world, whatever it happens to be? People got lost behind the message, and unfortunately, there was a lot of money behind it at the end as well. So people got rich off it, and this is where you had books like The Game come out, or the Pickup Artist TV show, or the movie. There was a lot of emphasis on people projecting what it was, that how they viewed the world, and in the end, it meant very little. So by the time I left, I was sad I was leaving, and there are certain people I cut off out of my life that I've not spoken to since. It was time.
But what were the odds? I've always said that regardless of how good you are with women, or if you're the greatest pickup artist in the world, or however you define that, maybe it's not through a group. Maybe you're just good with women. Me and V have talked about it before. You grow up with a few different buddies or something, and some of them are naturals or some of them are good at it, and they hang their hat on it, right? That's what because, you develop things you're good at, that's your significance, and you like to talk about it a little bit, right? Sure. So you also don't trust those friends around your girl. So, right? Not like literally like where you're like, oh, they can't hang out. You just you just notice, say, they drop a couple lines or a couple looks here and there, right? But I always say that everyone eventually meets their match. And what I mean by that is that they're going to meet someone that, even if they're playing the game, they've been hooking up with great women for a long time, where they're on the other end,
still challenges them. Yeah.
And someone might be playing them, or just not that interested, but the sex was good. And they're on the other end going, wait a minute. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that if you're dating enough and you're going out there, I don't care who you are. I don't think you're bulletproof to that happening to you on the other end. Do you think that's true?
Well, yeah, most of us eventually got hurt at certain points.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to say the least, because like my biggest struggle when I first walked into it was building attraction and meeting someone. And I actually dated someone for 2 years when I was in, quote, the game. But I ended up breaking up with her. I broke her heart. Felt terrible about it afterwards, but then I got back on my horse, and then someone broke my heart. And I realized, wow, like this stuff is really hurtful. I had not felt that kind of pain ever in my life. Like I grew up in a screwed up household. I thought I knew what pain was. And then getting your heart broken, oof, I can compare it to many things, but I would say the closest thing is probably death. It just feels awful.
You know, knowing, being a teacher the last 12 years and being around people, and you did retail too in your younger years. Retail is just an interesting thing to work, because it's such a mixed bag of people, and I don't even know who you work with.
Actually, you know, I can tell you this story. I can tell you this story. I ended up sleeping with my manager. That's the truth of pickup. So I used the same skill sets against her. She was about 3 years older than me, or 3 years older than I. And just slowly and surely, one day she called me. She's like, "Do you want to grab a drink?" And it was just completely random. So the next day we went to work, and we were just awkward as fuck next to each other. Like, it was obvious something happened. And one of my coworkers tapped me on the shoulders, like, "Do you want to tell me what happened with you and Amanda?" I'm like, "No, I do not want to talk about it."
But like 2 weeks, did you guys not talk about it again, or were you given the good shift on Saturday?
Were you
starting to get all the good shifts?
I was definitely given a good something, I'll tell you that much. But shifts was
okay. So it was a positive experience. That's excellent.
It was a positive experience, but she was, looking back on it, she was pretty bipolar. So I wouldn't go after that kind of person again. But amazing sex. I will say now, amazing sex.
Well, crazies always are. Yeah, they work in both ways. But the funny part about that is, I feel like now, and I would say that this was probably very much true without checking all the studies and the numbers or whatever. From 2005 to now, there's a lot more people that are mentally messed up. Let's just use the word, with the bipolar and those kinds of things.
I don't think it's that more people are messed up. I think that we've gotten more broader with the spectrum of how we analyze people.
Okay.
That and also people have become more self-aware of it. Because before, you grew up, we all had that one friend that would just get overly emotional. You'd be like, "Oh, that's just Karen, just let Karen be." And now we have a better understanding of it. We understand what episodes are. We understand, mental health issues. And you brushed up on some of them the other night. It's the case where people are more self-aware of it. So now people are being called out on it, which is both a good and a bad thing. I am of the belief that when someone's ready to ask for the help, they'll get it. But until then, the amount of influence or external influences will have very little to do with it.
This microphone's more than once here. Just a little.
I will send you some electrical tape, Mac.
Please.
This is coming. There. I need an antenna on my head. Huh?
You need to open wide and put it closer to your mouth, Mac.
Yeah, that'd work.
Get it excited; it will be charged up.
But what I was gonna say is that, the more women that a guy dates, or women that date men for that sake, it seems like you're going to be more susceptible to get a crazy one. And if you do get a crazy one and you've never dealt with one, because the crazy comes in different flavors.
Sure.
But you know what I mean? Like some of the breakup stories, I'm like, like just leave. Be thankful you're out. Be that. Well, I want to help her. She's been going through these problems, or I'm going to help through and I'm like, well, you don't have any background in
mental health.
But yeah, like those kinds of things, and it's not changing. And then the person starts diagnosing them. Well, I think you're actually bipolar also, you're this or whatever it is, right? And it just seems like the propensity for that to happen, the manipulation involved and those things, that's a whole nother ball of wax as far as these are the drawbacks when, spinning plates or those kinds of things. I think it's a good thing to leave your options open, but long-term, the longer you do it, you're going to meet your match or you're going to meet a crazy. A fatal attraction or something like that, where you're like, for 3 months, it was great. For 4 months, it was outstanding. And then, dun, you're like, whoa, story. It like elevates into, she did what? What happened? It's like, oh, yeah. It's like, just leave. Don't worry about no contact. Like, it's like, done. If you meet so many, you're not vetting, you're not really looking for a girlfriend per se. That's going to happen to you. They're going to get one of those.
It'll slip by.
Oh, now that I think about just this statement, my friend that wasn't a pickup artist, but one of my friends in college, we didn't go to the same college. We went to the same high school. He was good with women. He'd always have some bragging stories. He was in a fraternity. But I mean, he also had, I won't say it because he's a good friend of mine if you ever see, but he also made bad decisions based on quantity over quality, and it bit him because it was, there were some situations where it was like, I thought she was taking the pill. It's like,
oh, yeah, you have to be careful with those. That's one thing that's one thing I never screwed around with. I always wore protection, and I'm proud of myself. Thankfully, I never caught anything. But it was a case of I knew people out there that were reckless, and yes, some of them got women pregnant, some of them were caught something. So you had to be incredibly careful. And it's ironic. It's ironic you brought up the crazies because I actually did have that in my notes about you become really bored with stagnant attraction. So when you start learning what builds attraction and you're able to get attraction from someone who you consider very average, it becomes very boring. So all of a sudden, the people that were giving us a run for our money were the people that were avoidance, the people that had cluster B personality issues, bipolar disorders, the people that were very hot and cold. Because with the hot and cold, the sex became really elevated because it was a constant instability and you didn't know when you were going to get it next. So you put a high value towards it. And of course, if you're misaligned with what you find valuable, especially at that time in your life, which is we were looking at quote 9s and 10s that we could get together with, and they were giving us inconsistent results, it was very easy to become addicted to it. Yeah.
Tension and buildup. Yeah. I mean, clients of mine that are men that have been in really bad relationships, they always say I'm like, so why did you stay? And then it comes out. You've heard me in the live stream before. It's like the intimacy. I'll just use the word intimacy.
Well, you can use my example with my ex. The sex was amazing. And, I'm vulnerable to this as well. And I have the experience and I have the education. I got hurt. And it just shows you the extreme level of what this is capable of doing to your brain. Someone with my level of knowledge still got hurt. You have to be careful. You're never 100% vulnerable to it. I myself tend to find myself attracted to many unstable women. But with that being said, with the maturity I have now and the experience, I put much more emphasis on the emotional stability and security now because I understand what kind of costs will come out of that instability.
Was there a guy that was like the GOAT that you came across, or he was like the greatest pickup artist where you were just like, wow, this guy's fucking legendary?
Yeah, there was. He was actually my best friend for the longest time. And we actually ended up stop being best friends because without going into too much detail, the person he ended up with was actually a good friend of mine. And then I discovered that he was cheating on her with another friend of mine. And this is where we start peeling away the layers of the onion, where you start seeing people for their true colors without going into too much gruesome detail. And this is where we get into the whole PC thing. Let's just say the actions that he was doing would probably let him in jail if it ever got out. And it wasn't something I personally, from an emotional or even from a conscious standpoint, could ever approve. So that's the main reason why that ended.
What was your greatest piece of peacock apparel?
Oh fuck.
Puka shells, or
no, you had like the standard black fingernails or black
oh,
eyeliner.
you did black fingernails? Those are big. When I'm in California now, everyone had black.
Really?
A lot of guys had painted toenails.
Yeah,
like with flip flops on. I was like, I had to take a double take, so it got my attention. I'm like, huh?
Yeah, there was also one time I dyed my hair blonde, which you can imagine with my skin tone, like doesn't look good at all. But
you did black nails. You did black nails though.
I totally did black nails.
And so
black nails, leather strap, all different types of stuff.
Like the leather strap had little spikes.
I never went that far. But so I knew buddies of mine that would wear chokers, and that was funny because some of them would wear chokers with spikes, and the girls would ask, "What's that for?" He's like, "So you don't try to bite me." It was just like some stupid shit like that. It was just about getting a quick haha reaction out of it.
So what would be if you did the black nail polish? Would it get attention? Would it garner? Would it work?
It would get attention from the person that found me attractive. I found, because it's an excuse. It's an excuse to talk to someone. So girl be like, "Oh, you paint."
Sense. I know what you mean.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, you paint your nails black." I'm like, "What? Do you like it?" And you take it on from there, or be like, "Don't be jealous of my style," or something stupid like that. Something to get that witty response out.
Was there guys that entered into the group where you're like they ended up just going for it, and they just couldn't turn it around? The reason I ask is there was a client of mine that was telling me in London they have quite a few of these pickup artists that coach on the spot. I don't know if this is true because it's secondhand information, but he was saying that like out in front of the bars and clubs, they'll be like waiting for the guy and telling him like, "Hey, this is what you're gonna do." And he's like, you see it a lot. It's not just like one guy. And he goes, the guys that they're coaching, he's like, "Mate, they have no chance. They're just taking their money. And I'm like,
I mean,
how do you do you think has that happened?
I've met people that are extremely antisocial, like not in the psychological sense, in the sense that they just have a hard time keeping a social interaction. So I have seen that. What I will say is this: I could probably teach you 10 or 15 lines that could keep a conversation going with someone for 10 minutes. And you could probably keep that person engaged for 10 minutes. Would you think that's a fair statement? I could probably teach someone how to keep a conversation going for 10 minutes.
Sure.
Well, if I can do that, I can teach them for 20 minutes. I can teach them for 30 minutes. The only difference is the amount of time you're willing to invest in getting past that pain point. Because for a lot of these men, sometimes women too, believe it or not, it was about discovering this part of themselves that they've never really discovered. So it's like riding a bike. If you've never ridden one, it's going to be incredibly intimidating to get on one and to trust the fact that your momentum is going to keep you straight and moving forward. And it's the same thing for talking to a complete stranger, because when you get rejected, this as men, getting rejected absolutely sucks. And what most women don't realize is the same feeling that we have approaching a woman, a complete stranger, is the same feeling they feel when they're alone in a dangerous place or a place that they aren't comfortable with. It's that same feeling. So even making that approach takes a lot of effort, especially for people that have never done that before.
What are your worst stories?
Or
one or two.
dealing with crazies who would bombard my phone, would egg my house, would
Egged your
Egg
house?
the house.
yeah,
You're pretty
yeah,
juvenile.
Yeah, I did that
yeah.
before when I was 14. 15.
What did they call that when you put the toilet paper?
TPing, yeah.
That's an old
I-
one, man.
I never had my house TP'd, but yeah, I definitely had people, or I'm assuming exes or people I dated egg my house. Yeah, definitely had that.
Okay, I was hoping for a little more details, but we'll
We had the
Google it.
cops called on us for doing it.
For egging a house.
Yeah, yeah.
There was
I've thought
there was
about
one.
it here at my house there's an entrance to that hotel near my house
Mhm.
that they ring the bell all the time, and I've thought about dropping an egg on them a few times. Go ahead. I'm sorry, bud.
No, it's all good. I did have to call the cops at one point because there was this one girl screaming at the top of her lungs outside my house, and I'm like, you have three options. You can stand here like an idiot and have the cops called on you. You can walk away and act like this never happened. Or
What was
we
her
can have a
issue though? Like you hooked up and you didn't call me?
Her issue was something along those lines. Let's say it that way.
So let me
It was
just-
more along. I don't mind telling you guys. We hooked up. I was very transparent with my intentions were I'm not looking for anything serious. And then she spotted me at the bar talking to someone else that night and decided the best way to deal with me was to come to my house after the bar. And
Oh,
confront
that's cool. Do it in private.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
me. Do it in
Let's-
private in front of our entire neighborhood and screaming at the top of our lungs
Screaming.
at 3:00 in the morning.
I like.
Sure.
I'd love to hear you talk to the. Did you call 911 or? You can't really call the
No.
police in America. You don't. It's just 911.
Dispatcher.
Right?
Yeah, it's the same thing in Canada. You just call 911, or
So
they
did
have
you
in the
call
non-emergency.
911?
It was the non-emergency number. No. She calmed down and we had a talk, and then I sent her on her way. But it was just a case of, this girl was
hear that.
screaming.
I just want to let you guys know I'm a pickup artist. This has happened to me before. I don't. I just want to put it out there before you come over here. This happens to me sometimes, and I'd like it taken care of, so you just know what's happened.
I remember my neighbor, and bless his heart, bless his heart. So we had a duplex, and in that duplex, my side of the house was completely the same as his side of the house, and the master bedrooms were wall to wall. So you couldn't do anything on one bedroom and not hear it in the other. So the previous week, I had been, ironically, with the manager that I talked to you about, and she was a bit of a screamer. So rather than come to me and tell me, hey, keep it down, he decided to reach out to my landlord. And basically, the way it was is he saw me in person. He's like, do you notice that the house is vibrating a lot? I'm like, oh, yeah, I've noticed that there's some construction down the road. And I thought he was being serious. I thought he was talking about the construction. And it turns out, no, he was talking about the girls I was bringing home. And he's just like, yeah, you want to keep it down? So he actually went through my landlord to like essentially tell me, keep it down. And then the following week, he gets woken up at 3:00 in the morning by this woman screaming at the top of her lungs in the driveway. So he comes outside and he just looks at me with this big smile on his face. He's like, so I ask you one time to keep it down. And you reply by having someone screaming at the top of their lungs at 3:00 in the morning. I'm like, go to bed. I don't want to deal with this.
You know what
today.
my reply? What I'm thinking, you should have recruited him. You should have said, "Hey, I see a lot of potential in you."
Yeah, no, I didn't. I wouldn't go out and recruit everyone, Mac. It wasn't like that. This wasn't an NLM scheme. It was a case of. It was a case of men helping men get out of their rut, if it helped. Some cases, to your credit, in some cases, some men never understood it. They never caught on.
Yeah.
But I was a big emphasizer that if you tried hard enough and you were consistent enough, yeah, you'd have to go through some pretty shitty pain points. But you could master it. You could get through it if you wanted to.
Would there be guys that were shamed a bit if they ended up wifing up a woman, 1 year, 6 months in? Would they be shamed out of the group?
I would say shamed out of it, but it was looked down upon of quickly settling with like the first person that you found attractive. Now, the part of the equation
happened,
that,
though. I can see it happening though.
Oh,
where
yeah.
you're like,
Oh, yeah.
God.
You probably wouldn't be in that
Dude,
group
it-
anymore, though.
yeah, it definitely happens where we would teach someone the skill sets, they'd attract someone, they'd be like, all right, I'm committed, done. And then they'd be out of the picture. And you'd hear from them 3 or 4 years later after they broke up, and you're like, well,
Back, maybe.
yeah, you're back. Oh, now you're come crawling back trying to learn these skill sets again. But the irony is that and you know this, Mac, the older we get, the pool available of people that I would consider secure and stable tends to shrink, because the people that tend to be secure and stable tend to pair up, and they tend to have long-term relationships, and they tend to commit for life. The people that tend to break up after a certain time tend to be people that still have unaddressed issues, people that have unconceivable differences. It's rare that you have someone that has good head on their shoulders split from someone under good conditions. So, now I'm in my late 30s. The pool around me and the people I can choose to date, unless I decide to, date someone fairly younger than me, is quite limited. So you have to make do with what you have. So to these guys' credit, they got the skill sets they needed. They built a connection with someone who they consider high potential. And some of them, did commit for life. Most of them didn't, as I'm sure you're aware, most relationships don't work.
Would you say that with where things are headed with women being, dare I say, at least in America and stuff with the dating apps, a little bit more promiscuous or openly using Tinder or those things to get a free dinner or do these kinds of things, or, that they get where they were getting approached maybe when they worked at the mall or something, they're getting approached 5 times more on an app or something. Are they becoming like their own little version of a pickup artist in a different way?
Well, women that were attractive back in the day were getting approached 20 to 40 times a day easily. So the only difference is that the app has allowed them to filter out most of that criteria right away, so they don't have to deal with the repercussions of having a conversation with someone they're not interested in. But what apps have done is it's made a readily supply available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The big joke I have is that most women, at least most women that I would consider, fairly attractive and within the age group of being sexually active, probably has 5 or 6 men on her phone that she can call at any time and have sex, no questions asked. I can guarantee it.
That's a good point, because I've dealt with women in breakups. Sorry to interrupt, but they'll go, I can get attention or attraction, or I can get it anytime I want.
Yeah.
Right. Like they will say that.
But the double-edged sword with that, and this is where Tinder becomes a bad thing, is when you have a variety of selection and 90% of the guys you're swiping right on is going to be a match, and all of them use the same line, the same generic opening. Every time that they invest in a date, it's a potential of getting hurt. It's a potential of wasting time, even if they are getting free lunches out of it. It's a huge sunk cost. Versus men, we deal with the rejection up front. We deal with the rejection of, oh, she didn't like me.
It's a good point, right?
Yeah. Women, it's much more of a risk from an emotional standpoint. So I actually have pity for women on things like dating apps, because there is so much of a potential loss from their perspective than there is from men.
But I would say that I do have men contact me that they went on 2 or 3 dates. They thought everything was good. Actually, I've had a few calls like this, like, what is this? What is this? Like, we had a great date. We were in the hot tub. We were messing around, like, I thought everything was good. And then she ghosted me. And it's like after 3 or 4. So that's one of those surprise rejections where, like, I thought there was interest. I thought I wasn't jumping to conclusions. And I'm like, well, she's probably talking to someone else, or she's probably on other options too.
Mm-hmm.
But
ghosting has always been a thing. Even when we were doing pickup,
I just say you'll never know. Sometimes it could be a death in the family. It could be a lot of things, but that one hangs up a lot.
You're right. It could be something sporadic like that, or the most likely risk option is she probably had someone else that she was seeing, and she probably decided to settle with that person. And not everyone is willing to reach out to everyone that they've been seeing and say, "Hey, I'm settling down." So, some people do, and to that aspect, even when I was on dating apps, I always gave those people a positive reinforcement, saying, "You know what? I appreciate the honesty. Thanks for not wasting my time. Wish you the best of luck." And if you handled that conversation well, and you handled that rejection well, I would say the majority, I can't read into a glass ball to see how many people ended up in long-term relationships, but I can say with a fair level of confidence, the moment that relationship didn't last and it broke apart, who was the first person that person called?
Right. Because you showed that you could handle the rejection and not be Crazy. Yeah.
Mhm.
One
Exactly.
final question. If you had to design your own dating app, what would you do?
Ooh, dating app. That's quite a packed question, Mac.
That'd be a great question. That we already have the name Clutch.
Yeah, there you go.
That'd be a hell of a name for a dating app, huh?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, not to sound too egoistic, sounds pretty fucking awesome.
I did it for you. That's why I said I did the honor so you didn't have to do that.
Right.
I got out in front of that one for you.
You know what would be an interesting dating app? And this is just me thinking sporadically. Partially, I was also reading on this other social media app called Be Real. Have you heard of it?
No, not familiar.
So Be Real has apparently skyrocketed this year. And what it is, it's a dating app that only lets you be online for about 2 minutes at a time at different times throughout the day. And what it does is it tells you, all right, it's time. So whatever it is you're doing, you can take a picture of it. So it takes a picture of what's in front of you and it takes a selfie. So you can be at the office, or you can be on a hike, or you can be playing video games. And you basically just post at that one moment and you see what other people have posted at that one moment, and then it shuts off. So it's completely randomized and sporadic. If you can come up with a dating app that does something similar, where you say, what are you up to at this random time during the day? You can actually get a good understanding of what this person does with their time versus what they're projecting to be in whatever it is that they've decided to build.
Much less staged.
Yeah, much less stage, although I'm pretty convinced people would still find a way around it.
I was thinking the same thing, because one story I always come back to is a guy I know that's pretty wealthy and does everything top shelf, everything, and takes care of his body, does all those things, hired a photographer, took pictures of himself with a guitar. And he was like, yeah, my brother told me that stuff's so, and he goes, I know what it is. I know what it is, but I get action from it. It works. And he's using money to, hire a professional, and he does. It worked for him, but it is a staged photography and different things. And thinking about when you said that, I'm like, that same guy would find a way to use that app and stage it. You know what I mean? He would find a way to be doing something. Mm-hmm. I'm on my motorcycle by chance right now. Hold on. It's like,
I mean, during the pickup days, you were dealing with guys that knew how to pull the strings, who knew how to manipulate your emotions and build attraction. You're doing the same thing now with dating apps. Even I told you about my dating profile when I had one, right, Mac?
I remember a little bit. Yeah. I don't remember all the details, but yeah, I remember you were.
Yeah. So the long story short of it is I ended up making a PowerPoint presentation out of my photos. So I would have pictures of me in a PowerPoint presentation, be like, oh, are you amazing? Are you ready for an amazing time? Was the first slide. And the second slide was, how do I spend my time? And it would be a pie chart talking about different hobbies I have, spending this time going to the gym, this time going to the office, this time socializing, drinking, going for cycling in the hills, that kind of thing. And then I'd have a line chart saying oh, these were my key areas. So income was constantly going up, confidence was constantly going up. And then there was one gap in 2011 where my confidence just shot down to 0 and then shot back up. And that was the opener that most women would comment on. They're like, what the hell happened in 2011 that caused you to lose all your confidence? And just small things like that. But it was all about being a funny profile. And I came off as an egoistical jerk if you didn't get my sense of humor. But for the people that got it, I had some pretty consistent relationships come out of that slide deck, which was always fun to me. So it stopped being about wearing the pickup stuff and start being about how can you be as nerdy as possible.
That's your dating app. That's your dating app right there. You could fuck, man, right there. You got it. So you could scale your PowerPoint.
I mean,
you could scale your PowerPoint, and then mine wouldn't be 2011. It'd probably be 2009. But we all have one, so you could literally show other people, hey, I have a model here. You won't have the same ups and downs and all arounds, but you can fill in the pie chart. You could do these things. There you go, man. And then mix in the Be Real part.
The irony of it is that it was a unique profile. This is why people swipe right. If everyone's doing it, I think it would kind of lose its flow.
But everyone likes something that show me the directions, right? Show me how to scale it. So,
Well, it
Well, I
was
don't want-
funny because when I was doing the dating app thing, there were a few guys that came up to me and like would say, "How did you do this? To show me how you did this," and I would literally build their profiles for them. And then over time, they would actually start getting matches, and they'd be like, "Wow, this actually works."
it's like usually when people ask me about it, I'm like, I'm not an expert on it in any way. I haven't been on a whole lot of them, and I said, just make sure your pictures are right.
Mhm.
You know, like that it's a big deal. And so one guy
Yeah.
that I know, he actually went and got a photographer, not as much as the guy that I knew that was wealthy. And he was like, oh, immediately. And it was funny. I didn't ask him to send me the pictures, but he was like underneath a pier with like his hair hanging and different. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
Jesus, man. You know,
I
but
mean,
that's
I
good
paid a
spouse.
professional. I paid a professional resume writer to rewrite my resume, and the
Yeah.
result of that was I earned an extra 40 grand now as a result of that. Who says you're doing the same thing to find a relationship, which probably is worth more than 40 grand if we're being
Good
completely
point.
honest.
Good point. Good point. I've never heard of that Be Real one, but that's a good point. Like that, if you could combine those with the other ones, because it's just so many people complaining about it. I'm like, I don't know if there's a way around it. You're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to find a way to make it work for you. In some
I
other
mean,
way.
we're dealing with the opposite. What's the word I'm looking for? What's when you pull something back and it ricochets back? What's that called?
Boomerang.
It kind of like a boomerang effect, yeah. So social media is losing its grip on society, and that's to be expected, especially now at the climax. So I would suspect in about 5 years' time, we're still going to have Facebook, we're still going to have Twitter, we're going to have the social media platforms, but the amount that people will spend on it will be dramatically less because people are starting to understand from a mental health standpoint the repercussions of it, especially post-COVID when all we did was social media. So now that people are kind of pulling back from it and retaking their lives, like hell, even on my Discord, I used to have people message me about 30 to 40 times a day, direct PM asking questions. Now it's barely 2 or 3 questions a day, just because people are out and doing things now. People are living their lives. They're getting better at rediscovering who they are. And I think that for every negative consequence, for every breakup, there's a good reaction to it. There's a good learning formula. It's the same thing with pickup. Like, look, I did shit when I was in that community that I'm not proud of. I hurt people needlessly, and I forever will carry that guilt and inner turmoil with me. With that being said, I've also helped a lot more people, and I've come out of that equation positive, and it's allowed me to be a better person. It's allowed me to help more people. It's allowed me to build a career out of what it is I'm doing now. That's a direct result of that experience. So I have no regrets.
We'll end it on that. That's a good way to be, man. Drop the mic.
Boom.
No regrets.
No regrets.
I like that, man. I've seen a couple people with that tattoo, and I always think that's a good one to put on because it's actually.
I got my Phoenix tattoo. It's not the same thing, but it's
Phoenix?
my way.
That's one of those.
Phoenix. So the metaphor here is it's carrying a purple and blue ribbon, and this represents narcissism and childhood. So it's basically me rising from the ashes of what my childhood was.
Fuck, that's a hell of a story. That's a pickup artist story to a tattoo, huh? It's like, I'm going to get a conversational piece. I don't want a fucking tattoo. I want something I can tell a story to.
I mean, if I bring up narcissism within the first 10 seconds of someone meeting me, they're probably running for the hills. But tonight, this is for me. It's not for anyone else, right? It's a reminder. I purposely put it here on my work arm, so as I'm working and I look at it, I'm reminded. Remember where you came from. Remember where you are.
Yeah.
You can push further.
With a symbol like that too. That's a good one, man. Yeah, over
Appreciate
here they have a. You identify with the year that you were born. Do you know what animal you are? Like the rooster, you're an ox.
Yeah, I'm an ox, yeah.
What an honor, man. B's actually an ox also.
I am, yeah.
Oh,
B's
nice.
actually an ox also, yeah.
Is B ever going to come on camera? All I hear is
he's
this
shy. He's got a lot
voice.
going on. He's getting over a lot of things, so we're just working him. We're working him slowly through.
So the way you're describing him, you're treating him like a Jay Leno burn victim. I don't know if you heard about Jay Leno, but that's a terrible joke.
Jay Leno got burned?
What?
Yeah, he had an explosion with one of his cars.
From one of his 100 cars?
Yeah, he burned like half his face off apparently. So I haven't seen the photos yet.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
Jesus, man. Oh,
it's a terrible joke. Looking back on it, it's a terrible joke. Ignore I said.
Well, we got to record it, so we can always throw it
it.
back in your, next time. Make sure you clip this, and then next time we can open with this. Next time we bring Clutch on in the first minute, just if you guys want to know something about Clutch's sick sense of humor.
Well, imagine that his burns are like much worse than they're portraying in the media. Then I look like a real fucking asshole. Like it's just like he's like Two-Face. It's just like, oh well, he's done.
There's a consequence to everything. It seems like that's the real end thing with a lot of people that are making a ton of money to have 50 or 100 cars. It's like Seinfeld's like that.
He's
Leno, Rogan. Like it's like you've arrived if you got 100 cars, man. It was
why do you need more than two? Like I don't.
Well, I mean,
unless you're a real enthusiast.
I'm all for being wealthy and rich and all those things, but I think there should be a cap at like 100 mil. And then you're supposed to like give some away.
Donate some.
You know what's funny is like I always reference Native American ways and whatnot. And reading that book Tribe by Sebastian Junger, he has like a really good chapter. And I'm sure it's not 100% accurate because there's so many tribes and whatnot. But he was saying that the number one value amongst most tribes was you couldn't be greedy within your, which makes sense, hunters and gatherers, right?
Yeah.
Got a couple extra rabbits in the teepee, man. You know, it's like,
you want to share,
right? So that, and if you didn't want to be in the group, it was fine, you could leave. But greed and you're a part of the group, and loyalty, right? If we have to fight another tribe,
those are survival, right?
Yeah, those are the things. Like, but greed was like paramount, and it's like ironic in our culture.
That's a plus, man.
I mean, you're the top warrior, man. No matter how you
give that another 50 years, that's gonna have to change because
you know what I mean, though, right? Like that's what's glorified. Where it's ironic because in some other cultures, not even just Native Americans, there's some other cultures in the world that would not find that to be accepting within the culture. Like it wouldn't be like someone pulls up, and they got Lamborghini, they got all this extra stuff. It's like, not impressed. Did you want to sit down and have some food?
Well, right now we're still living in a surplus right now. So people aren't really quite understanding the limitations that we as a society will eventually have to confront. Like in 20 years, we might have to come up with some hard decisions of, maybe we have to abolish restaurants because there just isn't going to be enough room for them or enough resources available. Or maybe, not everyone will be able to drive a car every day because of the carbon emission effect. There's a lot of things that we haven't really truly digested what the costs are going to be long term. So we're going to have to make some hard choices. And in my opinion, the societies that are going to flourish are the societies that are making those investments now to essentially become more sustainable and to become less greedy. Because the other day we announced that as a species, we had the 8 billion person born on this planet as of the people that are alive today.
What's his name?
Oh, I have no idea. But my point was this is the climax of the human population, and from now moving forward, it's going to slowly start peaking down because people's ability to have children is slowly diminishing. You can blame whatever you want on that. I'm a big proponent, and probably the petroleum-based substances we're throwing in the air and the cancers that we're causing is probably a big component to it. But regardless of which, we're going to have to start learning how to be more sustainable, emotionally and physically.
Sure, man. All right, man. We'll definitely get another one. Maybe the next one we'll talk about an alternative to marriage. I've talked about this before, and maybe you can come up with your own alternative just for fun because you're pretty creative. I like to put you on the spot, but like the 4-year sex contract, I'm working on it. That's mine.
Fair.
Going to be called the 4-year sex contract. There's going to be an actual contract.
So what you're saying is I should hold off on my marriage and wait for you to finish this contract.
No, I think that I believe that if someone says they're getting married, I've actually talked to a couple other people that are coaches. I won't mention them, and they're like, "Bro, I'm married." I'm like, "Okay," like because he pushes more masculine, different kinds of things, and all men. and he gets shit about it, and I'm like, that's fine. Like I would never think that was a bad thing. I'm just saying, I think it's interesting when you think about it. There's boyfriend, girlfriend, there's marriage. Is there an alternative?
Potentially. Like I knew one person or one couple that were in an open marriage, which I had never seen before. And I always quoted them when people asked me about alternatives. And then this past year they got divorced. I'm like, okay.
But they're married. But they're married, so like it's not really a different. They're still married. That's going to be more common. I've heard of that happening more often. Open marriages or polyamory, right?
Yeah, polyamory.
Yeah, and I've heard multiple, things that come about from that. But I mean, what is there another alternative, like a 4-year contract where we can? Like I thought about that. It's not for everyone. It's like someone will go, "Oh, that'll never go." I'm saying for you, but I mean, there's some people out there that if you wanted an alternative where you have a commitment that's a little bit more than boyfriend, girlfriend, but it's not marriage. Is there something else in between? Because it's a pretty big jump.
Well, you have to keep in mind that marriage is a social construct. Like we as a species, theoretically, like we do pair bond, but humans normally up till 150 years ago only lived till about 30. So there's a big jump here between us going from the average age of 30 of us dying to us being closer to our 70s. And for the last 15 years of that, we're usually retired. So how do you spend this much time with someone, and how do you commit to life when our lifespans never used to last that long? And we as a species who used to be hunter and gatherers usually had polygamy in that kind of society. So it's a recent phenomenon. And with the Catholic Church losing its influence, is it going to be the dominant norm in the next 200 to 300 years? It's up to debate.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. Well, it's been good. It's been grand. Thank you very kindly for taking the time today and bestowing your wisdom on to us and a few good stories that were.
I mean, I hope that I don't see myself on YouTube Shorts talking about Jay Leno's burn.
No, I won't do that to you. I would never do that to you.
Ready to go. No, they're clipped already.
I know that's a good thing about not having a huge viewership. You're not as worried about where's this going. But it's funny. I've had numerous times, not so much, and I'm just starting to do these interviews and different things like that. But I've had multiple times where it's like, can you take it down? What you talked about in the story? And I'm like, really? You weren't even. People don't know you were there. But I'm always like, I'll take it down today. No problem. I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in having someone upset about. I'm not TMZ.
I would be critical of that and laugh. Except my ex had an interview with me and her on her channel, and I told her to take it down because she had put my actual name on there. So I said, look, I can't have my name associated with this kind of content when I have a career now. So this is where I have to draw that line. So I can kind of understand.
Oh, I'm totally fine. I joke around, but I do it within 24 hours because I'm like, no problem, man. Like if it's going to cause you no sleep, it's not that serious. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
All right, bud. Good to see you. I'll let you go. I'll let you sleep. All right, bud.
Well, yeah, have a good one. Good to see you guys. Cheers.
All right, bud.
See you.
All right, whoever's still on deck, that was good. I'm going to be doing some more of this, interviews, inviting people on, talk about some different topics. But we got 5 on deck. We had people in and out, not too many comments, but I think it was an interesting conversation. Did you get anything from that, B?
Yeah, it was pretty informative.
What was the biggest nugget for you that you're going to put in your back pocket and take home and put in your safe?
I mean, just confirming what I thought. There were a lot of guys that needed a confidence boost, from the PUAs, and it gave them that. It seems like Clutch got that. So, yeah.
Anything else?
It was just fun hearing some of the stories. I don't know. It was good. It was really good.
Have you ever witnessed a pickup artist in action?
In action? No.
You didn't know?
I didn't know it was like a huge, thing. I didn't know, I knew there were TV shows when I was younger, I said previously, but it sounds like there was a pretty big community of them, and I didn't realize that was out there.
Did you read the book The Game?
No. I thought you.
So you're not familiar with it at all?
No.
Okay. So that leaves a big hole there, huh? Where you're like, what?
Yeah, when you guys referenced The Game, yeah, I don't know.
Did you ever have friends that were interested in the pit? No, you guys were naturals.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they have terms like natural. Yeah.
I don't know.
Like someone's just naturally good at it and whatnot.
Mhm.
What's your, I mean, kind of putting you on the spot here, but I know you're really good with this. What's your greatest pickup line?
I don't know. Pickup line, like a
Yeah,
specific,
yeah. Like,
I
do you
was
have one
never-
in your
no,
back
no.
pocket? Like,
I was never the one to have like, oh, this is
I've
what
heard
I
you
use.
before. Come on, man.
That was on the fly then, because I don't have like one ready to go. No.
Did it hurt? I remember hearing the one on. Remember the show Martin
Yeah,
with Martin Lawrence? Yeah. Did it hurt? I don't think Martin
When
said it,
you
but someone.
fell from heaven.
Yeah, when you fell from the heavens, and it's like when you're young and you first heard that.
Oh
you're like,
yeah,
what?
I mean, there's still, yeah.
So clever, huh?
Mm-hmm. So is that what you would use?
I don't know if I've ever read or picked up a pickup line
Mm-hmm.
anywhere.
Mhm. Specific, like.
Do you and B in those C's? What's C's?
What is it?
Do you A B? I think you missed a word in there. Do you and B in those C's? What's C's? Celtics? No.
We talk about Celtics.
You've got to have a good one, man. Come on.
Honestly, that one you just said is like.
All right, I
one
got one for you. What was your greatest conquest?
Conquest.
Yeah,
Like
like
the one that I was like, oh my god, I have to
you're
work for
impressed with
this.
yourself a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit, where you're like, that was a challenge. Like maybe she didn't like you at first, and you got to go out on some dates, and you guys ended up hooking up,
I'll
and
have to
you're.
think about that. Do you
Trying-
have one ready to go on deck? 'Cause I
You
have to
can't
think
answer a
about
question
that.
with a question. That's just not allowed, dude. You can't do
It's
question with a
allowed.
question. Not
No,
on a
it's
show
allowed.
like this. You got to let it rip. Like I know you have something in your head right now.
No.
You have one in your head because your eyes went up like this. That means okay, I'm going up to the mountain here. Yep, got it. And then you went, do you have one? No. You don't got nothing. You
Think
what's has there been a situation where you impressed yourself?
Yeah, a few times.
You've impressed yourself where you're like, and she maybe didn't show a lot of interest at first, but you said the right things, did the right things.
Mm-hmm.
How did that transpire? And take me from the top.
No, I'm not gonna break down my story.
Why not?
No.
You're not even on camera. No one
No,
knows your
I'm good.
name. You go
I'm
by
good.
B. See? You're not ready for the camera, man. Come on. You have one in your head, too, and you're like, I don't want to tell that story. I don't want to tell that
I
story.
have a couple, yeah.
You have a couple where you're like, you sat back afterwards and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
that worked out.
Yeah.
All right, folks, it's been good. It's been grand. B's feeling a little bit shy, so maybe we'll get back on deck tomorrow and see if he comes up with a story and writes it out.
Let's go for another hour. I'm good.
I got to call in about an hour, so I need a break on my
There
voice.
you go. Okay.
I love to talk, but sometimes I do get winded. Does anyone have any closing questions about that's stayed on deck for this whole time? Pickup artistry. You have to be confident in your own shoes, even when you're being a fool. Absolutely. Great line. Great line. Even when you spill a drink, like I said, spill a drink, do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Be okay with it.
Definitely.
Be okay with it. Being a fool. I like his example when he said, for example, a dork. You know, a guy that's a dork that enters the, and we were talking about dork before, like
Mhm.
using the word dork, right?
I think you had a video.
I'm like,
on
do you feel like that's a really negative thing to call someone? Because I think it's funny. I don't
it's
think
kind of a funny negative thing to say. It's
you know,
not- it doesn't
I'm
hold,
just
like, a
saying
lot of
how
weight.
how sensitive words are these
Yeah,
days,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
And it's kind of funny if you, when you say, "Oh, this guy's a dork," someone could, you said that.
Mhm.
Don't call them that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it applies to a lot of people out there.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually dated a couple dorks. You don't think of females being dorks?
No, I was just thinking.
Is
that.
you didn't think that, huh?
I-
A female's
no,
not a
no.
dork.
Mm-mm.
Why not? Why wouldn't dork be?
I don't know. That's just not. I just wasn't thinking that. It's just that you dated a couple dorks. That's fun. I was
Like,
just
"Oh,
thinking,
that's
guys. Yeah.
Because there's no way a girl could be a dork. Would there be
No,
a
of course. I mean, yeah, but I just
dorkette? Dorcas? Doofus was an old
Doofus
word.
is an old one. That's an old one.
I was glad that Clutch brought back Showboat. I haven't heard Showboat in a long time. If you're
We use that for
showboat,
basketball.
you're
a lot.
showboating, man.
Don't showboat, man.
What would be the term now?
Showboat. Yeah, I don't know. Showboat. What would
Show
be the
off, I
equal-
guess.
Yeah, show off. I
No,
don't know.
there's something else better than that. There's
Showboat.
something cooler.
We just always use showboat.
There's
for,
some
like,
kind of
basketball.
lingo that's better than that, though.
Mm.
Were you a showboat on the hoops floor? A little around the back?
Yeah, sometimes I got in trouble for it, for sure. Well, I mean, it was fun to, like, in the playground.
Stick to the fundamentals, B.
Yeah, but when you're in a real game.
Stay in the cones.
Right.
You gonna try that move again? You're on the bench. All right, folks. I'll talk to you later. Talk to you tomorrow. Take care. It's been good. Clutch. Thank you. I appreciate it,
That
bro.
was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Take care.